Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
Some secrets are kept in the basement, others in the morgue. Welcome to Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, featuring defense attorney and host of the podcast, Defense Diaries, Bob Motta.
Richard Allen, accused of and convicted of being the Delphi murderer now, taking the lives of those two little girls in Delphi, Indiana, back in 2017, right? Horrible story, horrible case. We all watched it play out. You watched it play out in the courtroom. Where do we go from here? Because we always were kind of saying, Richard Allen, maybe he has that get a new trial free card. How shiny does that card look going forward, Bob?
It's tough to tell. And really with the ultimate issue. So, I mean, the next step is either they're going to file a post-trial motion, which is the equivalent of seeking a new trial. That'll be denied by Gull. Mm-hmm. After that's done, they'll file a notice of appeal. I know that they're trying to get a team of like top-notch appellate attorneys from Indiana together to handle the appeals. And then it goes on direct appeal. Now, one of the lawyers that I've spoken to that did some of the work for him on the collateral stuff, like the original action stuff, revolving around getting the lawyers put back on the case. Michael Osbrook, he's of the mindset that he's trying to push a post-conviction relief type petition before the appeal, which is unusual. The difference is that in appeals, you're dealing with the issues that arose pre-trial and during the trial. Mm-hmm. All right. You're not bringing in new evidence. Now, post-conviction relief act stuff, that is where you have to bring new evidence, newly discovered evidence forward. So there are two very different mechanical petitions that are filed that do two very different things. So with the appellate side of it, you're going to have this issue. Did Gull rule improperly on various motions? Did she rule improperly keeping the third-party culprit stuff out? Mm-hmm. Did she infringe upon his right to a speedy trial, his right to a fair trial by removing his attorneys in the middle of it? Was that cured by them being reinstated? So it's like you've got all these different issues. What were his due process rights violated by way of them putting him in a prison via a safekeeping order that was a hearing that took place prior to him having counsel and without him being present in the courtroom? The things that happened in this case are crazy.
Yeah.
So ultimately, all those things that we know do not sit well with the Constitution are going to be weighed against these confessions.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's ultimately what the issue is going to be. The other issue for the appellate lawyers is how do they attack the confessions? They filed their motion to suppress those confessions, but it was kind of like an umbrella type motion, like a catch-all, like where they weren't specifically saying, okay, we're trying to exclude this confession because Monica Walla was, the written confession in her hand, who, was his treating psychologist, who has been shown to have been investigating into the Delphi case prior to and during her treatment of Richard Allen. Like, we're looking to say that one is involuntary, or that it was coerced, or that it's not even his words. Mm-hmm. And instead they just kind of attacked the conditions of the confinement altogether, essentially reaching the conclusion that everything that he said during those 3 months is involuntary or was involuntary. He was on Haldol. He was involuntarily being administered Haldol. He was psychotic. They put him in a prison, and that's not where we keep pretrial detainees in this country. And, I mean, like, in that, the big missing part of that is you're going to really need a whistleblower.
Yeah.
You're going to need somebody who worked in that prison to say that all the things that they were saying that they were doing to him are true.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were torturing him psychologically, that, it was like a constant barrage of, we know you did it. You're a child killer. You're a baby killer. You're a baby killer. Admit to it. Threats to the family, promises of him being able to see his wife, of transferring out of that, whatever the case may be, whatever they used, whatever means that they used to get him to start saying those generic confessions, is because, everybody that likes to point to the wallow thing and talking about the confession that had the details, which you and I talked about at length during our last time that we chatted, it wasn't him speaking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a problem in this situation. If Monica Wallow was on the up and up, I'd be more inclined to say, well, that's a problem.
Sure.
That's a real problem. But Monica Wallow wasn't on the up and up.
Mm-hmm.
Monica Wallow was knee deep in tons of different Facebook groups, Reddit. She was went out to the trail, went out to the bridge, like sneaking around on her computer system in the prison to find out about Kagan Klein, just doing shit that a woman who is a psychologist and who is treating a patient should never be doing.
Yeah.
This isn't like a convicted felon who's getting some kind of treatment after the fact, and the person's learning a bit about the underlying crime. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who hasn't been convicted of anything, and you've got his psychiatrist or psychologist rather playing armchair sleuth.
Yeah, like Nancy Drew, basically.
It's ridiculous, man. So, like, ultimately, the way it'll go down is if the direct appeal, the appellate court says, all right, look, Gull messed X, Y, and Z up, but we find that the manifest weight of those confessions outweighs her mistakes. Therefore, everything that she did that was a mistake has been now commuted to being nothing more than harmless error, because if you had brought the third party culprit in, if you had brought all that in, it wouldn't have changed the fact that this jury heard however many confessions it was, and that the confessions outweigh everything. So then once it gets denied at that level, it then goes up to the Indiana Supreme Court. Now, the Indiana Supreme Court, from what I hear, is much more receptive to the concept of the conditions of his confinement causing these confessions to have been basically involuntary. Mm-hmm. It's or coerced, whatever you want to call them. So if they're more inclined to grant him a new trial, it would probably happen at that level. If they are of the same mindset as the appellate court and they say, nah, like the confessions are too much, we just can't do it. We're not willing to it's a bridge too far for us. He just confessed too many times. So at that point, you then shift over to, if it's denied there, you shift over to the federal side, and you can, do a writ of habeas corpus, or you do what Michael Osbrook wants to do, and you file your Post-Conviction Relief Act stuff. And, but the Post-Conviction Relief Act stuff is where you're really trying to hunt down who did this. Mm-hmm. It's a different thing, and it's frankly probably the best route to go, because in this case, for Richard Allen and Kathy Allen to ever have a normal life, if he were to get a new trial or to be released from prison somewhere down the road, you want somebody getting snatched up on this thing. Yeah. Because otherwise the end result for Richard Allen is everybody who thinks he's guilty now is going to think he's guilty then. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's no life out here in those conditions. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background right now. They're preparing. Sentencing is happening on the 20th of December. After that time, the ball will really start rolling with respect to, everything that's going to go on with the appellate process or whichever route they decide to go. But it's going to be interesting, man. Like I kept trying to tell people, on our lives, I'm like, look, an unspent casing, even though lawyers think it's bullshit, jurors don't.
Yeah.
And confessions are powerful, and people have a very hard time understanding the concept that people would say that they did something that they didn't do. And then you've got Alan saying that exact thing to his mother. Why would I say I did it if I didn't do it, Mom? So it's like, but at the end of that recording, you hear him saying, okay, like somebody standing in the room with him. Tony, I want to trust this verdict. I want to. I want him to be the guy. I want those girls to have gotten justice. I want the families to have gotten justice. The way that this thing went down, I don't know anybody that's intellectually honest with themselves how they can think that this thing went down the way it was should, and that you can feel confident in that verdict, man. It's like I don't sweat the jury. They went by what they had in front of them.
Yeah.
I've had this debate with Osbrook. He's like, I don't have to respect a verdict. I'm like, yeah, you do. I'm like, you take it up on appeal. I mean, all they could do was go by the evidence that was presented to them in court.
Yeah.
They have no access to anything. They theoretically didn't know anything that we know about all the other stuff that's going on in this case. Now, they did know about the treatment in prison, but maybe at the end of the day, I can't wait for the 20th to come and go, because I am desperately hoping that some of these jurors are going to come out and start talking about what it was. I'm dying to know. Are you dying to know? I want to know what did it for him.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know what did it for him. And I'm curious to know if after the fact they still have the same opinion now that they've seen the other elements of this case, the other 75% of the case that they did not get to see in court.
Yeah. I mean, it's like those two questions are the burning questions, right? Like, what was it for you?
Mm-hmm.
And had you known this, would you have come down in the same way? If those are frankly, I only need to ask those two questions because those are the only two that I care about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, because those are it. Those are the two questions.
What would be counted as newly discovered evidence here? Could that be any of the things that just were not admitted into the first trial? Because there was a ton of stuff, obviously, that was evidence technically, but if you never got it into court, is that new evidence? Is that just dismissed evidence? Because it's really just the opinion of Gull what made it or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's got to be something that was not available to them at trial.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's a different thing. Like, you're having to go in there on that argument that she ruled improperly on the third party culprit stuff because it was evidence that they knew of. Mm-hmm. Newly discovered is where somebody comes forward and somebody that knows something, that says something that truly was not available to them prior to trial or at trial, so no, it's different. Like those arguments about, them not being able to put forth any kind of defense other than reasonable doubt it's appellate level stuff. It's appellate court stuff. So yeah, it's like that. It's a very different beast. Like post-conviction work is completely different. Like that's where you see post-conviction work a lot with, obviously, with the advent and the discovery of DNA, and then the technology that's improved and continues to improve year after year after year. Yeah. That's why you're seeing so many. Those always come in under post-conviction relief because, they had the biological sample back then, but they didn't have the ability to show us what it meant. Yeah. So now that they have the technology, it's newly discovered because it couldn't have been discovered back then. So that's why you always see those things coming in on post-conviction petitions as opposed to appeals with all of that stuff. So, and it's the same thing here. It's the same thing here.
The problem being you got Gull and you got Liggett and you got kind of the, little kingdom there where they all have, they kind of control things to a very scary extent. If this does get a new trial, would it go back to Gull again, or could it go back to Gull again, or could it?
If the appellate court doesn't say that, like, there's going to be an attack on her in the appeals that she was in fact biased. Mm-hmm. So the state will rely on the Supreme Court, who really was silent as to it. So like the only kind of like, I guess you would call neutral arbiter was the Supreme Court, as they tried to remove her from the case in their original action. I sat in that courtroom for that, for that hearing in front of the Supreme Court, and it never came up.
Yeah.
It was in the brief, but it wasn't really addressed, and it wasn't really addressed in the opinion other than saying we're not booting her. So, the only other attacks on her were made by defense counsel where she's sitting in judgment of herself.
Yeah.
So those issues are certainly going to be raised on appeal. So if they find that she was biased, that her statements in open court with respect to the attorneys, her actions with regards to the attorneys, if they feel that those showed bias, then that would, if they remand it, they'll say, if they find bias, they're going to say it's not in front of Gull again.
Yeah.
you get a new judge and you get a new trial.
Yeah.
If they don't, theoretically, it can be in front of Gull again.
Back to square one.
Imagine?
You already know what would happen. Like, why even do it? If I were Richard Allen, I'd be like, fuck it. Just keep me locked away if this is my only option.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of it is that you've got this thing where, if they say, all right, well, we found the confinement conditions very compelling. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to necessarily bar those confessions from being introduced, but in order to counteract them, we're going to allow for the third party culprit stuff to come in, because we think that there is a nexus with Elvis Fields stating that he left DNA on one of the victims, giving details of the crime scene. We think that is a nexus that's been created. And it would, like, I'd kind of like to have her sit on the bench while all that shit came in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, and the other part of this, Tony, is that I was of the mindset, and I was very open about this, that I thought that the defense was rushing this to trial. Mm-hmm. I thought that there was so much shit out there, so much shit that had legs that wasn't nonsense. Like, forget about the Odinism stuff.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there that had legs. And there were so many things that came up at trial that they weren't prepared to handle, like the van thing. And then them having Brad Weber get on the stand and testify that change his testimony, change what he had told the cops prior on the stand, changes it and says, yeah, no, whatever I said before about going out to repair my ATMs after work, no, that wasn't true. Came straight home, because it lines up perfectly with their timeline.
Yeah.
The phone stops moving at 2:32. It's like they made the facts fit. They say, give us a criminal.
I mean,
we'll
it's what they did.
Fit.
It's like they're playing with the cheat codes on this game. And like everybody else is just trying to play the damn thing. And they're like, look at them. We got 100 lives. Up, down, left, right, BA, select, start. But
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a very disheartening case to see that this could happen in our country. The way that it has played out. I hope they find the right person. I still don't think it's him.
I still don't think it's him either. And neither of us know.
No.
Neither of us know. But, I feel the way that this went down, I cannot trust that verdict. And if they had the evidence to get him, the powerful evidence to get him, I wouldn't be feeling this way.
No.
Because if I were to subtract the confessions that I believe they extracted out of him, and I'm left with that unspent casing and the fact that he was out on the trails that day, it's not anywhere near what I need to know in order to find him guilty of those crimes, especially because they didn't establish a time of death. Yeah. I kept screaming on my lives. I'm like, attack the timeline. They have no way to prove what time the girls died. The conditions of that crime scene are bizarre. I don't give a shit. Where is all of Abby's blood? Where is it all? Why is her body clean? Dude, when we saw the crime scene photos, there was not a drop of blood anywhere on her body. Anywhere. And we're talking about somebody whose throat was cut. And like nothing on her hands were, if you're stabbed in the throat, the first thing you're just instinctually, you're going to grab your throat. Yeah. You're going to cover your wound. There's nothing. Dude, like everything about it is so bizarre, and they crammed it all into this weird little timeline of theirs where the people that are like, oh, the timeline makes sense. Here's when Alan's here. I'm like, but you don't know when the girls died. Like they didn't prove that to me. Her phone stops moving. It's
even if he is guilty, this is not how you handle a trial. This is not how you get to justice or find the right person. You can't just railroad somebody because you all have a hunch.
Cramming them in the hole.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Well, hopefully, we're going to be watching this for years, which is horrible. Now it's a matter of Richard Allen surviving prison.
True that. True that.
Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
You're neck deep in a dark, twisted tale, and just as the tension peaks, bam, a commercial about some miracle diet pill breaks the spell. It's like finding a fly in your soup after the first bite. But here's the fix. True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts. You get to enjoy your crime stories without the junk. Ad-free episodes, extended interviews that go beyond the surface, and early access to all the gruesome details. It's like swapping out a can of cheap beer for a glass of fine whiskey. So search for True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe and keep the darkness flowing uninterrupted.